Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm starting this series that I call Weekly Report, at which I will talk about some interesting, mostly tactical stuff I see from the games played at the weekend. I'll choose a few of them and try to discuss here in detail. We just finished the weekend that opened the curtain for many European leagues like Premier League, La Liga and Ligue 1. Plus, the season for German top level were also initiated with the DFB Pokal first round and DFL Super Cup games. There were lots of good games, but this week I specifically want to talk about three teams: Manchester City, Arsenal and Bayern. Mainly how City and Arsenal used position and flexibility for their advantage to manipulate their opponents, Burnley and Nottingham Forest respectively, and although Bayern had the right ideas, how lack of speed and communication hurt them against RB Leipzig. It was interesting that both City and Arsenal faced against opponents who used a back five to counter against 3-2-2-3 formation City and Arsenal have been commonly using since last season. Company, Burnley's head coach, was against the idea that Burnley had used a back five due to the man-marking approach, but in the out-of-possession phase, it eventually resulted in a back five. We will return to that. It was proven numerous times by many different teams using different intentions but targeting to control the game through dominating possession that using 3-2-2-3, 3-2-5, 2-3-5 and in possession formation containing 5 men at the final line may struggle creating advantageous situations against the back five formation. This is due to man-to-man matching at the last line or a squeezed space due to the number of players at the same line and the offside rule. We saw many examples from City, Bayern, Arsenal that formations like 3-1-6, 3-1-5-1, 3-diamond-3 can be useful to overload the last line and create unused pockets between and within the lines. The very last example that you probably still remember was the Champions League final with Guardiola's City using 3-1-5-1 against Inter's 5-3-2. Now let's talk about how City and Arsenal dealt with their opponents last weekend. Although Burnley's and Nottingham Forest formations were similar, their intentions were different, and although City and Arsenal's formations were sort of different, their intentions were sort of similar to overcome their opponent's press. Burnley used an aggressive approach. When City builds up at deep positions, they used a brave, almost fully man-marking approach, especially their last line of pressure were very aggressive and was not shy to follow their man even they moved to deeper areas. At the beginning of the game, City tried forcing Burnley sit on the mid-block. Once they could, Ederson joined the build-up at a higher position to offer 11 vs 10 play against Burnley's aggressive approach. This allowed Walker to push higher. As Walker pushed higher, Bernardo moved narrower, and City turned into a 3-2-6 formation. Yes, not 3-2-5, 3-2-6, thanks to Ederson. This forced Burnley's left winger Foster to stay at an intermediate position between Walker and Akanji, and of course City could directly use this for their advantage. As the game further developed, we saw when settled at mid or low block, Burnley using a man-oriented zonal press, something like man marking, but in this case, players only mark opponents entering their zone. Once City understood this, they started using asymmetries and overloads to create unmarked players in the opponent's half. Here, for example, De Bruyne is the highlighted player. He is initially marked by Burnley's left central midfielder, Josh Cullen. As Burnley are pushed back to mid-block, De Bruyne starts moving from right to left side, but Cullen hesitates to follow him and tries protecting his zone. And you can see, eventually, City could create an overload over the opponent's last line. After De Bruyne's unfortunate injury, Guardiola made some changes in the team formation and switched to a 4-3-3, providing width with fullbacks and using with a very narrow tip. First of all, this helps City to place their best dribbler on the field, Foden, to a central position, which can be critical in 1v1 situations that could easily occur with Burnley's approach at out-of-possession phase. Secondly, using multiple players at the central region, high up the pitch could be useful for direct ball opportunities. And finally, of course, having 5 central midfielders plus Haaland helped City to create central overloads and advantageous situations in opponent's half. City struggled a little bit to adjust to this new formation at the beginning. Bernardo and Kovacic, who started playing as central midfielders right in front of Rodri, couldn't drop deep effectively, and Burnley's aggressive press forced City to make a few high turnovers. However, as Bernardo and Kovacic started dropping deeper, City started to control the game, push Burnley to mid-block and create central overloads, while fullbacks creating conflict to Burnley's wingbacks with maximum width. A great example was City's second goal, at which City first created a 2v1 over Josh Cullen and then another 2v1 over Vitinho, which ended up with Walker's cutback and Haaland's goal. We saw numerous examples of how the central overload forced Burnley to open channels at their last line, and once City created a 2v1 with Phil Foden, they could easily attack this space. Dropping Bernardo and Kovacic deeper at deep build-ups was also creating more space for Foden, Haaland and Alvarez, who tried using this space with direct balls. Of course, we have to mention the versatility of City players was the key for Guardiola to be able to make this in-game tweak. In addition, the versatility helped City to use positional rotations all the time, which made the life really hard for Burnley and exploited their man-marking approach, especially in deep build-ups. The same thing, player versatility, was key in Arteta's approach to create advantages against Nottingham Forest as well. Nottingham Forest used a position-oriented zonal approach with a 5-2-3 formation, narrow at the tip and wide at the base, a much more reactive out-of-possession approach compared to Burnley. The space in such structure could be created usually at wider areas, and Arteta used an interesting 3-diamond tree to overcome and create space at wider areas, and his idea, I have to admit, that was very innovative to create those overloads. It was based on interchanging the pivot player as the direction of play changes. If Arsenal plays towards right side, Partey acts like an attacking fullback to join the attack, while Rice becomes the defensive midfielder in front of the back three. And when Arsenal switches direction, this time Partey becomes a defensive midfielder and Rice starts playing as left interior. This helped Arsenal to create numerical advantages or advantages 1v1s for their wingers while keeping their rest defense quite solid. Let's check the situation that ended with the corner kick before Arsenal's first goal. As Arsenal switches from left to right, Rice stays as the defensive midfielder in front of back three, and Partey stays wide and high at the attacking line. This helps his team to create a 4v3 at the right flank. Saka becomes the free man and attacks the box, receives the ball at a very dangerous location. Similarly, in another situation, Arsenal first switches to right flank, Rice moves to defensive midfielder, Partey moves higher. As Arsenal switches the play one more time, this time Partey takes the defensive midfielder position, Rice approaches left flank to help creating a 4v4. This helps Martinelli to use his qualitative advantage and Arsenal to create a dangerous position at the opponent's box. This innovative idea helped Arsenal to overload both flanks while still keeping a strong 3-1 rest defense at the back. Both Guardiola's and Arteta's ideas are great, no question about that, but it is eventually the player's capability to understand and implement these ideas on the field. When you watch Arsenal and City, you feel like the players have secret microphones on their jerseys. They are constantly communicating, constantly aware of what their teammates and opponent players are doing. They perfectly understand what they should do next from the location of the ball and the position of the players on the field. It is one of the bases of positional play. Position is a communication tool for players to help them to understand what they should do next. And both City and Arsenal players are just getting more and more fluid in this language each day. On the other hand, it is very difficult to comment on Bayern. One day you feel like, yes, this team is one of the best teams in Europe. They are super fluid in implementing their positional play. Players are so clear with their intentions and so clear understanding their teammates' intentions. But another day, it is the total opposites. Individuals are completely detached from each other. Nobody is aware where the advantages. It takes them so long to understand where to progress through. It was unfortunately the latter for them against RB Leipzig. By the way, here I will focus on Bayern, but RB Leipzig are one of my favorite teams since the second half of the last season. I'll certainly talk more about them in another episode, but today it will be more about Bayern. That's also partially because Leipzig played a different game than their usual game, especially the very early score advantage made them to play mostly at lower blocks and through direct balls, and they were very successful on those as well, but their real value is how Marco Rose managed to combine Red Bull style with positional ideas, which we naturally couldn't see a lot in this game, but I hope to discuss this in future. So Bayern have been suffering from this inconsistency for a long time. The instability in the performance, sometimes between the games, sometimes within the games, can be due to many things, but I really believe it is not because of the head coach. I was believing this during Nagelsmann era, now at Tuchel era as well. The tactical ideas both coaches brought, the things the teams tried implementing at each game are very novel for me. And on the paper, it should work. And when it's a good day, it works. But I don't know, the teams sometimes lack communication, concentration, energy that I don't know why. Is it because of training? I don't know, but I don't think so because of the names of these coaches. Really hard for me to explain this inconsistency. I just hope as the team leaders Müller, Neuer and now Kane join the team, the communication on the field will enhance and they will start to be more consistent. Anyways, let's see in fact what Tuchel tried against RB Leipzig's compact 4-4-2 block with mainly position-oriented zonal press approach, but also with a little bit mix of man-oriented ideas, such as save out on Musiala as left half space, wingers follow their fullbacks, etc. And we will see there were similarities with Arsenal's idea, forcing to create overloads with asymmetrical approaches at wider areas. For example, when using right flank, Bayern uses minimum width, Davies stays narrower at the backline to offer strong rest defense, De Ligt, Musiala, Kimmich, all players playing at the left central zone approaches the right side, and Bayern tries to create a numerical advantage specifically at the right half space, there with Tel pinning his marker, Musiala filling his space and Sané cutting in. As Bayern switches to left flank, Kimmich comes wider and Davies pushes higher and wider. Unlike the left wing, the width is now maximized and the last line turns into a 5-man line. Gnabry and Musiala attack the pockets. On the paper this was well, but the implementation was slow, very slow, and contained way too many errors. They could constantly create advantages on the field, but couldn't use them effectively. In addition to that, the poor communication led to dangerous RB Leipzig counterattacks as well. Here, after the switch play to the left side, Bayern width maximizes, Pavard decides to join the attack line and makes a forward run, but it really looks like nobody is aware of it. First, if you have Pavard in the box, then you would cross that ball to the center. But Davies sends it low to the edge of the box, where no teammates are. Meanwhile, nobody feels Pavard's space in the rest defense. Laimer stays at his own position, Upamecano decides to mark Openda in the transition, and Werner finds huge space as a result of this. Sané's extra effort saves Bayern here. In another occasion, Kim's extra effort in another one already saved Bayern from another goal. But this communication problem continued the whole game, creating problems for Bayern, and it is sad to say this, but it really looked very amateur for a team like Bayern. The second goal Bayern conceded, I still cannot understand. This is nothing tactical anymore. In a set piece, in a deep set piece, Upamecano decides to mark Openda and leaves his zone completely empty. Later, Leipzig starts short and almost just simply attacks this space, almost touches magical, really beautiful, but how Bayern left this space at the first hand is still inexplicable for me. Also, I think Bayern used the almost exact same high press structure City used against RB Leipzig in Champions League last year. You may remember that press was very effective and helped City to dominate the game and destroyed RB Leipzig. A 3-2 against opponents' 4-2 build-up, one player behind them as the free player to sweep if the ball comes there, and remaining the backline looking for man-to-man marking. Similarly, it worked for Bayern as well, didn't allow Leipzig to build up from back and helped them to make some high turnovers at dangerous locations. But once Bayern regained possession, their decision making was much slower than Leipzig's chip swap. Bayern RB Leipzig game showed the importance of how good players are at understanding and implementing what their coaches ask from them as well, from another different opposite point of view this time. Eventually, the head coach can come up with a great plan, good plan, but players are the ones who implement that on the pitch. The lack of communication in Bayern's squad was very concerning, as it has been since Nagelsmann era. Both coaches heavily use positional ideas in their game plan, but it looks like Bayern players sometimes just stutter or forget this language of position that is supposed to help them to communicate. I used once video analyzer to analyze the games I showed in this video. It's a comprehensive and a user-friendly tool that I strongly recommend. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked it, please don't forget to press the like button and subscribe my channel. Until next time.